Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. My name is Evan McCauley, president of the club, and we are thrilled to have you joining us today. This meeting broadcast is available on HCTV as well as our Rotary of Hudson YouTube channel. Our club meets weekly at Laurel Lake for breakfast on Wednesday mornings from 7:15 to 8:30 a.m. Come out and join us for a meeting. We'd love to have you as a guest. To learn more about Rotary, our club, and the impact that we are having on the local community and world, please visit rotaryhudson.org. Enjoy the meeting today and be the inspiration.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here again. Don't move too far from this. Hello, hello, hello. It's working? Okay,
I
good.
wouldn't hold it too close to your mouth.
Okay.
You're good. Yeah, we can hear you. No, you're good.
Do I really need it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me here today. I'm sorry that I'm not dressed appropriately for all of you, but after this, I'm going to work on some of that housing and urban development by working at a Habitat for Humanity today, learning to hang drywall. So hopefully I won't screw that up. But yeah, I certainly appreciate it because it's always a pleasure to be here. And as all of you know, from Legend Lake, or Laurel Lake has a special meaning to me since both my mom and dad had passed here. And so I remember it in very nice terms because it's always been this place that they enjoyed, unfortunately, at the end. But the first time I came here for a candidates night, I saw the nurses who had taken care of them over the time all in the back, and they gave me a thunderous round of applause. So I was very appreciative of that. At least somebody liked it. But you know, for those of you who don't know, I was also a prosecutor for 25 years, and I enjoyed every moment of it. I mean, it was great to be the prosecutor in the county I grew up in. I born, raised, and educated all within the confines of the great state of Ohio. I went to the University of Dayton for 7 years. I got 2 degrees while I was there. But and then I came back to Geauga and became a prosecutor, and it was great. But I had a young guy who I sort of ran the farm team. People, state reps and state senate and judges all came through the office because I didn't want to be a judge. I really enjoyed it. And one kid, Chip Henry, was out for an innocent bike ride after dinner one night and got mowed down by a lady who was .32. And you know, she was coming from coaching her daughter's game. Sure. To give you an idea. And this is about 7 o'clock at night. And then shortly after that, I had a Chardon school shooting. And I just came home that night, and I hadn't been opposed since '92 in 2012. And I told my wife, I'm done. I'm going to do something else. Then Steve LaTourette decided to retire. It was the right time for us because our kids were in college at the time. So, and my wife's still a nurse at UH Geauga every day. So I could tell when I've been home for 3 weeks that I'm starting to get on her nerves because she asked me, when do you go back again? but it's something that I really wanted to do. I wanted to change up how we were doing business. And you know, Steve had told me, one of the things he had told me that when I got there, there's the heavy lifting in the building's done by about 100 people here, and I'll leave it to you to figure out who they are. And I'd like to think over the last 5.5 years that I've gotten to be one of those 100 folks, because I think we have some issues there, no doubt about it. But some of the issues I think we can get resolved by doing a couple simple things. One, we need my dad had always told me, good Lord gave you 2 ears and 1 tongue. So he must want you to listen twice as much as you speak. And that is a rare commodity in DC because you've got a lot of folks who like to speak, but not enough who like to listen. In taking the time to listen to each other's programs, and when you do that, you'll find that you start with the things you can agree upon, and then work on the things you could disagree upon, and you'll find we agree on more than we disagree upon. We just might have a different idea on how we get to a resolution of those things. Secondly, I wanted to get my background in, my undergrad major had been accounting. And in law school, I studied nothing but taxes. And so back then, some of you might remember, there used to be 8 accounting firms. And I was interviewing with Ernst & Ernst, but I had that Perry Mason thing, and I went and started trying cases, and then I never would turn back, much to my wife's chagrin. But it was when I got to DC, I wanted to be involved in that part of it, the finance and management side of it, because we can't continue down the road we're on. And the appropriations process, just to give you a quick overview, would be the budget. Say there's 12 different committees, and to say the budget for purposes is.
Let it go. I'll just take the win.
Let it go.
Yes.
Let's let them.
For purposes of budget, it would say it's $1.2 million. There's 12 committees. Each one would have $100,000. The Appropriations Committee, each committee then allocates that $100,000 to whether it be Health and Human Services, or in my case, Interior, the Park Services, the Arts and Sciences, Transportation, Housing and Urban Development, or Energy and Water. Is the last one I've been on, and then about 60% of that is the nuclear arsenal, as well as the nuclear plants throughout the country. So once you allocate that, we pass our 12 bills, the Senate passes theirs, which they actually did this year for the first time in a while, and then they go to what they call a conference. For lack of a better term, it sands off the rough edges between the two, and then it goes to the President for signature. Anybody want to venture a guess the last time that occurred? The Browns won a playoff game, I'll give you a hint. A long time ago.
Yeah.
So just think of it. How can you run your business or your household unless you have a budget and you stick to the budget? You figure out what you're going to be spending money on to do that. And we haven't been doing that. And we need to get that accomplished. And I think once we could do that, that'll help force folks to actually make decisions, because when we need to do these things called CRs, or continuing resolution, we're just handing the administration money and they get to spend it the way they see fit. And it completely abdicates our responsibility as members of the House to control the purse strings. And people don't have to make hard decisions. And there's hard decisions to be made. But one thing I know is that we talk about American public, they understand shared sacrifice. And the beauty of numbers is that you don't need anybody to interpret the numbers for you. Numbers speak for themselves. My days as a prosecutor, when somebody wanted to explain the numbers to me, I knew where my feet were. Right? And so it's one of those things that if you take the numbers and you work them through, there's some hard choices that need to be made. But if we would work harder and we would hold more hearings, then the media wouldn't have anything to report about us fighting. They'd have to report what was taking place in these hearings and start to show the numbers to the American public, so we could all make an intelligent decision together on how we're going to move our country forward. We can't continue on the debt road we're on. We need to get back to doing the budgets and the allocations according to the appropriations process that are necessary to keep turn good ship America away from the iceberg and back to the open sea. Now you can see, no matter if you like the president or not, I know from last time I was here, a few who don't. But if you think about where we were 2 years ago, and you think about where we're at right now, and take him out of it, the policies that we put in place, the tax cuts that were effectuated, and the fact we turned off the regulatory spigot has changed this economy. And you look at just yesterday, the numbers that came out, the unemployment numbers that have come out. I mean, the economy's starting to move again. And the one biggest problem we have is one of the reasons we did the tax cut, obviously, and a lot of you understand, is that we had companies that were setting up their headquarters in foreign countries because they want to take advantage of the lower tax rate. Eaton, as they explained to me, look, if we don't do this and set up our domicile in Ireland and go to 12.5% versus 39, which was 26% to the bottom line, we're going to get consumed by a European country. This way, at least we own our own, where we're going and control our destiny. So when we were changing some of those things to bring it back, the biggest employer in our district is Steris. When I met with Steris, they said, we like this program, but we're not going to move back because there's no certainty. If you all get beat, then you're going to go back to changing the system, and we're right back to where we started at. But just the idea that we started this, in the first quarter alone, we brought home $300 billion that had been sitting offshore. And before, we estimated that there was $2 trillion because of all these companies that had moved their headquarters offshore. And then we got Mnuchin and Cohn who came to town, and they started talking about $3 to $4 trillion. Well, hell yeah, they worked at the banks and helped them park all that money in other countries. So now we understand that there's a lot of money pent up outside of our country. We need to get back to establish manufacturing facilities here in Northeast Ohio and throughout our country, and put it back into fueling the economy here in America versus sending it offshore where it sits parked waiting for us to get some certainty to our country and our financial situation. So those are some of the things we're trying to get accomplished. I'm not one who really enjoys this question from this crowd because I know it's sort of a rowdy crowd, and it makes the morning interesting. That's why I eat breakfast after I get through answering. But certainly glad to entertain any questions anyone might have. Yes, Father.
Yeah, so I recently did a ancestry DNA thing, and I found out that I was 70% Irish and Scottish, which explains my love for whiskey. And then I looked a little bit more. There was 20% German, beer and sauerkraut, and then about 10% Northern European, white skin, blue eyes. 100% of my DNA comes outside of this country.
Right.
Yeah, and looking at you, I think probably you as well. The rhetoric I hear from the president about immigration, the dehumanizing language, I find it repugnant to my sensibilities of decency. But even more than that, as Americans, we're a country of immigrants. What's your stance on immigration, especially vis-a-vis the president, but also in light of the whole situation?
Look, we need to fix the system. It's broken. Immigration system, similar to the budgeting process, it's been broken, and we need to address it. We need to have secure borders and guarantee that the people. Let's find out who's in our country, because right now the people come into our country, and we wanted to make sure that they're who they say they are, right? And I don't have a problem with people coming here at all, because as you mentioned, all of us came here from somewhere else, unless you're a Native American. Any show of hands on that? Elizabeth Warren must not be here, but no, just kidding. I made a mistake one time. Somebody said, "Well, I'm part Cherokee," and I said, "I apologize." And you were here originally, but for the most of us, we all came from somewhere else, and I get that. And it's funny because you get a lot of the pushback you get on immigration is from senior citizens who will remember when their parents or grandparents came to Ellis Island, they had to be healthy. They had to be documented. They have to have a sponsor or a job here. And most importantly, they had to hold their hand over their heart and pledge allegiance to America and learn English and become part of the American fabric of society. And they don't see that happening now, and it bothers them. And when you talk about all these people coming to the southern border, they talk about ripping the kids from their parents. Well, let's remember back in 2014 when they were coming under President Obama. We house like 15,000 kids now, where they were coming in under the catch and release program, and they'd have the kid with them and say they were with them, and they'd separate the two of them to document that there was actually a relationship between them. The person they released never came back. So that's why we have all these kids. And they learned to scam the program and to get into our country because they don't care about the kids. They're playing a game with the kids. Now, we all understand that people, are coming to our border because they want a better life. That's what America's about. We're going to need, if our employment rates are as low as they are right now, in order to get manufacturing and to get these things booming in our economy again, we're going to need immigration. We're going to need more folks coming to our country. But we need to do it in a way that all of our forefathers and grandmothers came to this country, in an honest, open, transparent way in which they document themselves, they do what's necessary to become American citizens. Coming to the border in a caravan is not the process.
Maybe it is.
Well, maybe it is, but it doesn't work. That's why we have issues, and that's why we need to secure the border. Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming today.
Always a pleasure.
Your opponent was here last week, and I asked exactly the same question I'm going to ask you. And that concerns attack advertising.
Okay.
In a commercial that Betsy Rader approved, she says that you're a double talk Dave who says one thing and does another.
I've been Dirty Dave, Do Nothing Dave. She's got a couple names for me.
Then in a commercial that you approved, you said if voters would elect Betsy Rader, that her liberal ideas would cost the American public $32 trillion with the T dollars. I understand the point of attack advertising, which is to denigrate the opponent, make it impossible if you want to vote for that person. But if you're all a bunch of scoundrels, why should I, the average voter, even want to show up next Tuesday and vote?
It's a good point, sir, and I appreciate that. But my opponent's been running against me for 2 years. And over those 2 years, I threw out a couple of the names I've been called and, attacked my record. And, attacks the votes that I've taken and things like that, taken completely out of context. Now, in my ads against her, I never call her any names. Everything is documented. She said something, the McClatchy News Service, she's for universal health care. Universal health care is $32 trillion, the Bernie Sanders system. The only person she's ever donated to in her whole life has been Bernie Sanders in 2016 under the documentation. She ran as an, I've known her, I mean, our kids went to grade school together. She ran as an independent. She never mentioned she's a Democrat in any of the things that she puts out. But she spent the whole time attacking me, and she's raised almost $2 million without ever hosting a fundraiser. All the money comes in from out of state. Now, my friends don't return my phone calls. And the one bad part about this business is when the first people you ask for money are your friends, right? And so the other day I needed to get a hold of a guy, and I sent him an SOS. I'm not asking for dough. I really need to talk to you. And he called me right back. and that's a shame. Big money's got to get out. There has to be a better way of going about this because, you know, you hear it. I mean, I was going door to door yesterday in Menor, and everybody said the same thing. I can't wait till this election's over till that stops. Mm-hmm. It's got to stop. I mean, the idea that, you know, I supposedly, she's saying that I voted against the pre-existing conditions. I voted against the health care bill for a reason. Did I vote against the Affordable Care Act? Yes, and I would vote against it again because it was premised on a lie. President Obama told you that you could keep your health care, that you could keep your service, and then admitted afterwards, it was puffing. We were selling a product, so we said things that weren't necessarily true. That's not what Americans deserve. We need facts and figures to make intelligent decisions. And when we were doing the same thing, we had a chance to do something really big as Republicans. When we were trying to fix it, take out the Affordable Care Act and fix it, because it's 1/6 of our economy. Again, we did the same thing the Democrats did. We did nothing to bring the cost of health care down. All we were doing was shifting the way we were going to pay our premiums. And the way we were shifting the way we were going to pay our premiums, people 50 to 64, like myself, and because my mother had a heart disease, at 50 years old, I had no idea what triglycerides were. Thank God my wife's a cardiac nurse. I had my physical. So those things are through the roof. I ran 6 miles that morning. I went into the cardiologist. I was 18 minutes on the treadmill, the top of things. You'll be fine. And I had a 70% blockage in the widowmaker. So I ended up with a stent. And my dad, when he died here, he died of melanoma. It attacked his system. I had diagnosed. I've already had melanoma removed from my body. I've got pre-existing conditions too. I'm 61 years old. Kelly and I'm on the Affordable Care Exchange in Washington, D.C. We pay $1,400 a month and $6,000 deductible. So I'm at $20,000 before we touch insurance, right? Now you're going to tell me that my premium is going to go up with pre-existing conditions 3 to 5 times. So my son in Chicago will go from paying $300 a month to $180 to make it more enticing for them to pay. It's 26 years old. And mine's going to go $4,200 to $6,000 a month. Who's going to buy insurance at that rate? And I had the same argument with the speaker, the president, and the vice president about the fact that we're lying to folks. This isn't something, Paul would always tell me, this is great policy. I said, your policy and application hurts people. Because talk about driving people from insurance, if you can't afford it, what are you going to do? You're going to buy catastrophic care. You're not going to buy any other insurance. The idea is to try to bring more people into the pool and try to have a larger pool so we can cut the cost for everybody. And we weren't doing any of that. And we were misleading the American people as to what we were doing. And even President Trump said after the House passed the bill that that's a tough bill. That's a bad bill. And hoping the Senate would cure it. I can't put my name to something waiting for the Senate to cure it. Now, I represent all of you. I took the same oath to God, all of them took. And I hold myself responsible to making sure if it's not good for us, then we shouldn't be voting for it. So if that's a lie, did I vote against it? Yes. I voted against the Affordable Care Act. Did I vote against it when my party tried to do the same thing? Yes, I did. Because I think we need to have the serious, intelligent hearings and bring in the multiple experts we have here in Northeastern Ohio. We're blessed with great healthcare facilities. Bring in insurance executives and have them talk about it. I mean, if you talk to UH or the clinic or SUMA or Metro, they all have great ideas on how to bring the cost down. But we just don't have those hearings, and we need to. So, you say I voted 31 times against it. Some of those votes were the fact that almost unanimous, and it passed, and the president signed, would be things like if you have 50 employees you were supposed to guarantee health care for your people. But if half your people are veterans, they're already getting their health benefits from TRICARE. So those 25 should not count against the 50. That's one of the 31 votes I voted against the Affordable Care Act. There's many more like that. When it was the law of the land, we were voting on to cure the defects in the Affordable Care Act because it was being implemented, and so we wanted to do something about it. And lastly, pharmaceuticals, which I also get hit on, that I'm somehow single-handedly driving up the cost of pharmaceuticals. The Democratic Party prepared, passed, and implemented the Affordable Care Act. Nowhere in it did it take down the cost of pharmaceuticals. And President Obama got panned for it by the local media. And when I said that to the Cleveland Plain Dealer editors, the only editorial board that actually had me in, the Akron Beacon Journal, told me don't bother. They already endorsed my opponent without ever talking to me, as well as another local newspaper. The only one that had us there, as soon as I said that to them, they all started nodding their head. You're right, we did take President Obama to task for that. The cost of pharmaceuticals were wrong. We need to do something about that as well. But let's stop lying about who did what and when, and talk about how we're going to fix the problem. Yes, sir.
Hey, you've been involved in the financial end in Congress. Right now we have, I would call, very prosperous times.
Yes.
I also read in the Wall Street Journal going to have something like a $1 billion deficit this year. I think we already have about $1 billion.
Right.
What's the answer to this? I mean, you project outlook and we're going off the cliff. We're almost like Greece on steroids.
Yeah. It's a good point. When we were doing the tax cuts, I went back, the last time we did this was 1986 tax cut. It was under Ronald Reagan. And the same thing happened. Initially you had some deficit spending because your taxes is our revenue in DC. So we're not cutting our spending, but we're cutting in how much we're taking in. And it takes time until more people are making more, corporations are paying more because their profits are going up. And that takes a few years to do that. And it goes back to the idea that bipartisanship was an interesting read, because during that I found out that President Reagan wanted to raise the debt ceiling. And Tip O'Neill, being the speaker, said, okay, I'll get my people to vote for it, since he controlled the House, but you have to send each one of my members a letter personally requesting it. The next morning in their office, under their door, was a letter from President Reagan asking him to do that. I mean, that's the kind of bipartisanship that we need. Instead of being us against them, we're one country. There's no planet B. If we don't start working together, then we're going to continue to have these problems, because you can't continue on the fiscal cliff we're going down without trying to generate in our economy some growth. And remember, we were supposed to get better than 2%. We're at 4 now, and we can continue to grow if we can get some certainty to our tax situation going forward, and we get some certainty to how we're going to pay our debts. Yes, sir.
First of all, I hope you weren't implying that all immigrants don't care about their children. You made that comment that it was 15,000 and not their children. Immigrants don't care.
I was saying that the kids got used, and they're
But then
sitting there
you
because
made
their
the
parents
statement
never
that
came
they
back for
don't-
them.
No, literally, you made the statement, they don't care about their children. So I'm hoping that's
I'm
not.
sorry if I misspoke. I know, I did
Okay.
not mean that at all.
I just want to make sure that that was
No.
not.
When these people were bringing children and saying that these are my child at the border and being separated under the catch and release, they never came back for that child. These are the coyotes they're talking about, or people who are extracting money from families back in El Salvador or Guatemala and saying, we'll get your kid to the family members.
Okay, I just want to make sure that
Yes,
that was
thank you. I'm glad you
implication that.
clarified. No.
'cause it sounds
I mean,
like a
'cause
lot of
those are the kind of things that you want. You want to encourage families to come, and go through the process as a unit and come.
Although sometimes the process takes a long time. And actually, sorry I got digressed, but back in the 40s or 30s, Germany had originally their solution was to expel all the Jews. There was a boat full of Jews that almost made it to the U.S. But at the time, the politicians, people said, look, we don't know who these people are. We can't really take them in and send them back and they all die in the camps. This is a real story. And I just want to make sure that we're not repeating that. But anyway, that's not my question. My question is, so you've been in Congress for a while. You're saying that there is a need for health care support and lower drug prices. So what are those solutions that you would propose to What have you brought forward to solve it?
Well, again, the ways to bring down cost of healthcare is increasing the size of the pools and allowing more people to participate in pooling.
Well, but if people don't want to, that was the reason for my understanding, the mandate was to increase those pools. So how do you increase the pools without, if people think they don't need insurance? Because right now, if they get sick, they go to hospital, they're covered.
Right. And they have
But
been
now they're
before.
covered in the most expensive way possible.
Right, and just saying like the Affordable Care Act, people were now covered, but where were they going? The emergency room for treatment, because they never had coverage before. So it wasn't properly explained to them that, having primary care physicians, and in this case, for us, it's gonna be nurses that are gonna be primary care physicians going forward, because it's just such a shortage of doctors to do that. And having things like making sure people have annual physicals. We implemented these same policies in Geauga County and drove our costs down. Annual physicals, and not just health-wise, but also dental, because dental is a huge problem in Dry Valley. Having wellness, where people start to, we gave people in the county $30 a month so they could go to work out at the gymnasium, and they had to show that they actually went 10 times a month to get their $30. And then, having people more involved in their costs on a cafeteria-style plan. The idea is that all of a sudden you have people going out and walking in groups at lunchtime and starting to talk about the fact that, you drink too much. I'm not saying you personally, but I mean, you drink too much, you smoke, you're overweight, you're bringing our costs, you have to pay more. And getting people involved in the idea that they actually, they're part of the costs or part of the savings by having those some commitment to the plans as a whole. The pharmaceuticals, back in the days, we were sending seniors to Canada. I was working with then Sherrod Brown, who was our congressman, about getting the buses together at senior centers so people could go over to Canada and buy their drugs. It's insane that we're paying this much. And the part that drives me nuts with the pharmaceutical companies is they say they need the money for research, then stop advertising. I can tell you how expensive advertising is these days, unfortunately, I know. But stop advertising, put the money back in the research of it. You shouldn't be able to go in the doctor and say you need plutonium or whatever the drug of the day is. The doctor should tell you what you need. And then, thank God we now have pharmacists who are able to tell you, hey, the doctor prescribed this, the generic is this, and it's much cheaper for you. We weren't allowed to do that before. And a lot of that has to be things that we do to start to show people that there's other ways of doing this. And another way is, when you have a little more involvement in it, have plans out there where if at SUMA it's $400 for this X-ray and the Cleveland Clinic it's $1,000, people go to SUMA. There has to be some, like anything else, something to drive consumers to the lower cost to help us all bring costs down. And lastly, apart, it's personal, again, because I can't discuss what other people tell me HIPAA, but my daughter is down at Ohio State and breaks her ankle. Fractured it pretty bad. I had to have pins in and stuff. And so it was, $6,000 deductible. Well, imagine this was like $6,900. Everybody here familiar with UCR, usual customary rates? Yeah. Try arguing that with the hospital. Wait a minute, insurance company doesn't pay this price. Why should I pay this price? Well, you're not an insurance company. Well, you take $100 from them, but you're going to charge me $1,000. Well, why can't I pay the $100 like the insurance company? They don't want to hear about it. Well, that's nuts. Everybody should know what the rates are. And why shouldn't you get charged 10 times what an insurance company does? Because they negotiated a better deal than you? So they're going to stick it to all the people who have to pay that deductible before you get your health care? That was infuriating. And I know there's a better way of getting that accomplished. But again, I don't have the perfect plan. I didn't say I did. But I know we have experts in this country who can help us arrive at a perfect plan. Or a much better plan, put it that way. Yes, ma'am, I know you've been raising your hand.
I wanted to thank you for your leadership on the Great Lakes funding, because that is a resource that is unique on the planet.
Yes.
And
85% of North America's fresh water is in the Great Lakes.
Yeah, I served on the Science Advisory Board for the IGC for a number of years, and so I'm aware of the need for intelligent management of how we use those resources. And so what my question is, particularly in relation to your work in the Interior Committee, what is your position on the current initiatives in the executive section about disposing of public monuments, public lands, and extracting mining resources on formerly protected wilderness areas. How do you feel about that?
You know, the question is about the use of public lands for drilling or for use of the mineral rights that might be below them.
And disposal of the public lands.
And,
so that-
and disposal of the public lands. I'll tell you one thing one of the numbers that's shocking, and it has every year, is the amount of money we spend on forest fire. Because in public lands out west especially, because.
And why? Because that's how the forests get renewed.
Well, there's also a cultivation process where you cut through a field to create a barrier so it can't just continue
Yes.
through it. It would have to jump those barriers. But as we learned in California, they were jumping the freeway and everything else in some of these fires. And the potential for that has gotten much worse. I believe if America is going to do what we need to do to get out of debt, Jim Renacci actually had the idea when I got there, and so I've been behind it, and even though he's leaving, I think we still got to be. America has to have a balance sheet to figure out what we own and what we owe. And we own a lot of public lands, and there are benefits to having these public lands, in which for potential for mineral rights and other things, as long as they don't affect the beauty of the land. If there's a way to do it and extract these mineral rights, we should do that and allow America to participate in that and help bring our costs down or our debts down in doing so. So I don't have an issue with that, but I certainly don't want to spoil the properties that have been maintained, because I think it's important that generations to come, just like the Great Lakes, need to enjoy the things that we've been able to enjoy over the years. Yes, sir.
What's your position on negotiating the cost of pharmaceuticals, allowing our government to negotiate that, which it cannot do now under law?
Right. We do it with the VA.
Yeah, but we don't do it with the government.
We do it with the VA, and it's shown to be effective, and we need to do it with the government. That's part of having hearings necessary to show the savings in effect, so we can continue to do that. And be able to stop the drug companies from adding, when somebody's just about to go generic, adding one extra element to it, and now all of a sudden it's not eligible to be generic, so they can charge you, the more expensive rates in that. That's nonsense. We need to get the generic as fast as possible. And again, having the pharmacists and the pharmacy folks being able to tell you that this exists in a generic, so you don't have to pay that, is important, because the doctors have to be on board with this as well. The idea that they're advertising, so you go in and ask for plutonium, and then all of a sudden the doctor's like, okay, I'll give you plutonium. What's he getting out of the deal? That shouldn't occur either. Doctors shouldn't be getting a bump for prescribing certain drugs. They should prescribe what's right for your illness, and if it's available in generic form, let you get it in a generic form.
Well, what's your position on allowing the government, passing legislation?
We should do it. I have no problem with it. No problem at all. I think we should. Like I said, we already do it, and it's proven effective. We need to do it.
Sponsor legislation.
I'm glad to do it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Dave, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear, and I'm going to show a little ignorance of government. Are you in a position, or do you have to be on a committee to propose legislation to address some of the things like you've already mentioned?
Right.
The things regarding pharmaceuticals, the advertising, things like that. Are you in a position to propose that legislation now, or do you have to do that through a committee that you either are or aren't on? I don't know.
Right. I mean, between Energy and Commerce and Ways and Means are the two that are, what you call the authorities, if you will, about putting together, having the hearings and putting together bills.
Yeah.
On appropriations, we're just dealing with money. But, anybody can put up a bill. And so, like, when it comes to Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, I proposed that. And because we were doing it through the appropriations process. And, people complain that, that's legislating through the appropriations process, which you're not supposed to do, because we're making sure that the money was going to be there. So when the WRDA bill, the Water Resources Bill, was going through transportation infrastructure, I put a bill in as an amendment to that tagged it on there to make sure that now we had the authorizing authority, so we had the ability to do it there. So the authorizing authority needs to come from these committees that have the hearing. Now, like, after we passed the AHCA through the House, I put up a bill to cover pre-existing conditions, because Well, they changed the way they could go about it, in that states could then determine what, out of these 10 essential healthcare benefits that were part of the Affordable Care Act, states could determine, well, we're only going to cover these 3. So when you talk about buying insurance across state lines, you're not paying, it's not apples to apples, unless you know 10 things in Ohio are going to cost you 10 in Indiana. And so, that would create issues for people. Let's face it, if you had cancer or if you have mental health, you're going to be the only one in the pool. So you have to either establish a way to get everybody in the pool, or to make sure that the issues that they have are covered. And that's why the state's getting involved at a bigger rate. So yes, there's ways of getting that accomplished. And we can do those things, but we've been told by the speaker, and I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know who's going to take over, the Democrats or the Republicans, but I'll be glad to see Paul Ryan go, because I thought Paul would be much better than John Boehner, but he's been a big disappointment, because we just don't have any hearings. The tax bill, no hearings. The health bill, no hearings. These were Paul's plans. Paul is 28 years there, never once signed the front of a check, and he put these things out there, and you couldn't discuss it with him. There's no, this is good policy. You couldn't change it. That's nuts. That's not what we're there for. We're 434 other representatives of 700,000 plus people. We deserve to all have some input on what it is that we're driving through the House. And then the next part is that I put up the bill, you got to get it through the committee and then get it to the floor, which is another process in and of itself. So if the majority leader wants to kill your bill, there's a lot of good bills sitting in, the majority leader doesn't, he determines when they're going to hit the floor. So to give you an idea, with the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, I went around first working on everybody who was along the Great Lakes, Democrats and Republicans. Marcy Kaptur was very helpful. And then went back and said, now help me with your state delegation. And even Jim Jordan voted for it. He doesn't vote for much. When we got it through, and then you go to Florida, they have a big issue with water too, and algal blooms now down in the Everglades. And you get them in California, who has water issues involved, and you get bipartisan support. And then I go into the majority leaders, and I said, look, I got the numbers. You're going to put it on, and then we pushed it through, and found out that the chairman of Transportation and Infrastructure was patting me on the back saying, we'll get this in the bill, goes to the Rules Committee, and tells the Rules Committee it's not germane to his bill and is trying to kick it out. And luckily we have another Buckeye on there, Steve Stivers, who told me about it. And then I went back and showed him that we had the numbers and everything else, and we got it included in it, passed 408 to 17. So you have to build the momentum and show that you've got this. And there's a way to get around the majority leader, but it's not used very often, and you don't make many friends doing it. So I tried to stay in the lane I was in and to get it done. Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So wrapping up, I listened to or watched a great TED Talk recently. It was by a gentleman by the name of Rob Willer, and it's titled "How to Have Better Political Conversations." And it's all about understanding how to communicate with people and that their viewpoint may be different than yours. So this Meet the Candidates month has been great. We've heard from both sides of the equation, and I think that Congressman mentioned something amazing today, and that we should all really be behind, and that's that we need to work together, and that we are all Americans. So working together, that's important. And as we heard this morning with our invocation from James, we're all Rotarians, and one of the main pillars of what we do is peace building. And one of the largest things that's breaking that up right now is the political divide. So as Rotarians, let's do our job to be that beacon of hope out there and to work together. So we're going to do our Rotabuck raffle here this morning, and then we'll be on our way.
All right. Blame Chris if you lost. Yeah, blame me.
All right, winning ticket 7772.
What was that number?
7772. Joe Avella, well done.
Okay.
first.
All right, no luck.
Thank you.
Yep. And lastly, thank you for your patience as we had some technical difficulties this morning. Really appreciate it. Have fun with Habitat for Humanity today. And to everyone out there, have a great week and be the inspiration.